Moms know May is a whirlwind. It's busy and chaotic. And just when you think you've made it through, summer starts. So now we're staring down a long stretch of unscheduled days, kids home around the clock, and the pressure to keep everyone happy. It's a lot. And it can lead to something very real: parenting fatigue or burnout. Well, my next guest wants to normalize that feeling because it's common and it's valid and it's okay to feel overwhelmed. So here to help us navigate it is Studio 5 parenting contributor Heather Johnson. Heather, welcome.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
You too.
This is such a worthy topic. So let's talk about first. So you want to point out what parenting fatigue is not.
Yes, what it isn't. So parenting fatigue is not you being a bad mom. It is not abnormal. It is not us not loving our children or not knowing what to do with them. It is none of those things. It isn't that we're not doing a good enough job. That is not why we feel burnt out, right? So we want to normalize this first. This is a normal feeling to have. There is a lot that goes into being a mom, into being a grandma, a dad, a grandpa. There's so much that goes into parenting and grandparenting that we can be exhausted in it. That's normal. So we've got to stop telling ourselves that if we feel burnt out, it means we're doing something wrong. No, it doesn't. It probably means we're doing a really great job and care about being a parent. That's probably what it means.
The care, that is the key word, I think. So what is it that we're just so busy? I know we talk about that all the time, but as families, we're so busy.
Yeah, we think that, right? We think that the burnout is coming because the calendar is overscheduled and we're overbooked and we've got so much going on. And yes, I mean, of course, there's a lot that we juggle. But we want to dig below that today and think more about where this is coming from and let go of we need a new process for the laundry or the calendar is overscheduled. We want to actually think of this differently, because what really contributes to parenting burnout are a couple other things that are bigger than what the calendar looks like. One is how we were spoken to and what kind of compassion we were given when we were kids.
Everything goes back to when we were kids.
I know. It's this frustrating thing, right? And we can't change any of that, but we can give it a nod for a second. And what I mean by this is, if when things were challenging when you were a kid, if math was hard, or you had a rough day, or you fell and someone helped you get up, when you spoke to your parents about that, or when your parents gave you feedback, if the feedback you got was void of compassion, which meant it was a lot of, you're tough, get up, it's not that big of a deal, buck up, let's go, come on, don't worry about it. If it was a lot of that, then as a parent, when things start to get challenging and we feel that overwhelm and that burnout, that's actually how we'll talk to ourselves the same way we were spoken to as kids. And so if you hear that in your head, and that's how you talk to yourself now with a couple kids at home and an overloaded schedule, we hear, buck up, you're tougher than this, it's not that big of a deal, let's go. That is going to lead us to feel really burnt out. So that's going to be a huge one. The other thing that leads to burnout that we don't often recognize is that if we're feeling burnt out, it means that there's something that's missing, something screaming at us saying, hey, Heather, there's a part of you that needs some attention that isn't getting any of that. And we want to pay attention to that. There is so much to us besides being a mom. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but maybe you run and care about friendships outside your family, and that's not happening. Or maybe you need more sleep. Or maybe you used to dance and you haven't danced in years, but you would love to do something like that again. When we feel burnout, it's a byproduct of those things saying, hey, there's other parts of you that need some attention. So give those other parts of you some attention. When we can understand that that's where it's coming from, gosh, it makes it so much easier to deal with our kids, because we take that step back and say, okay, what parts of me are talking right now that aren't getting attention that need them?
Well, and there's an answer, because if you're just saying, come on, stand up, walk it off,
tougher,
whatever,
let's go. Right.
Then there's no answer. Okay, so let's talk about how we can get ahead of the burnout.
Yeah, because we can get ahead of the burnout. The first thing we can do is we have to stop being afraid of being compassionate. Now,
ourselves
and to our kids.
Okay.
Both, right? So here's what happens. We have kind of this societal underlying fear that if we're compassionate to ourselves, it means that we're going to get lazy. It means that we don't care enough. And if we're compassionate to our kids, it means that we're going to raise kids that are entitled. That isn't true. And we prove it time and time again that it isn't true. When we will offer compassion to our kids, it doesn't create an entitlement. It actually allows them to be seen. And when they're seen, they're going to be more mindful of healthier behavior, of more patience with us, of caring about their own homework instead of us forcing them to do those things.
It sounds like I need to hear a difference between compassion and enabling, because that's what you'll hear people say, like, oh, they enable her or whatever.
Right. Being compassionate doesn't mean that we're giving in. We can be compassionate to a child who is frustrated or doesn't want to go to school today and still also drive them to school.
Yeah.
We can have both of those things. And it's the same with compassion towards us. We can't be afraid. We're afraid that if we say to ourselves, hey, today's hard, or being a mom to these kids is challenging sometimes. Just because we offer ourselves compassion doesn't mean that then we're going to decide that we're not going to parent anymore and that we throw in the towel. What it actually does is it allows us to not feel shame just long enough to then be more inspired to be a more engaged parent or a healthier mom. So we can't be afraid of that compassion. We've got to let that go. We've got to let that go.
Compassion.
Yes.
I'm all about compassion. You also say something about anger, not to be afraid of anger.
Right. You know, we feel overwhelmed and then we tend to take that out on our kids, right? We get angry. Maybe we raise our voice. Maybe we're impatient. We get angry with them. And then we beat ourselves up because we got angry.
Sure.
And so we want to learn from the anger instead of being frustrated with it. What anger actually is a feeling that's pointing its finger towards or trying to point out to us what needs are not being met for us. That's why we get mad, right? Again, it's easy to get mad and frustrated if we're exhausted. Well, that's a need. I need some more sleep, or I need some time to myself, or I need to reconnect with a spouse, or I need to take a step back and tackle something over here. There's a need that's not being met, and so anger becomes a byproduct of those needs that either weren't met when we were younger or aren't being met now. And so we can look at the anger, and instead of being annoyed or irritated or angry at ourselves, we can ask, what can I learn from the fact that I'm feeling this emotion?
Yeah, it
Anger
sounds like
is
that
normal.
anger can be a clue.
Absolutely.
It's a clue that something's going on.
And it's
in
it's
you or your
normal.
kids, really.
And it's normal. And so we can't beat ourselves up over it. No, if the anger then is demonstrated in poor ways, that the behavior is the part that we can get frustrated with. But we can get ahead of burnout when we learn from the emotions that we experience instead of beating ourselves up about those emotions.
What are the two things that need to be true? That's your next point.
It is. And we can let any two things be true. It's just important to let things coexist.
Okay.
So if we want to get ahead of parenting burnout, we've got to let the fact that, for example, our kids are going through a tricky stage right now, and I can still love them. We've let both of those things be true, right? I can be frustrated with being a mom today and also be a really good mom. Those two things can be true. It really helps us when we'll allow things to be true together. Just because today's hard doesn't take any love from the fact that we're in this position or that we care for our kids. So letting everything coexist and letting two things be true at the same time, it will help us take a step back, not feel shame, not let the emotions get overwhelming, and then we feel like we can tackle something instead of feeling like parenting is burning us out.
And you kind of already mentioned this about how we talk to ourselves, but basically we need to watch that we're not talking to ourselves the way that maybe wasn't helpful when we were kids.
Yeah, we need to make sure we're not. And also this moves forward even, because what happens is it's not actually the situations as parents that burn us out. It's how we talk to ourselves about those situations and ruminate about them over and over and over that actually burn us out. So today might not go as planned. We might feel overwhelmed and burnt out today. And then we beat ourselves up about it. Well, man, on Monday, I this, and this. And then the next day, Monday was so bad. And then Monday turns into, I haven't been doing this well for 10 years. We let it build and grow and build and grow. It's the building and the growing, the ruminating, that's what actually burns us out.
You gotta let it
isn't
go,
when there's a tricky
fix it.
We want to recognize again with compassion, okay, so I didn't love Monday. It wasn't great. All right, and let two things coexist. Parenting can be hard. Monday didn't go really great. And also, I'm grateful that I can spend time with my kids today. Or I'm grateful that I'm learning from the experience. Let two things coexist. So you're always having that checks and balances when we're working through these things.
Okay.
And
Heather, you're always just a voice of reason for us. I appreciate it. And these are things we need in the summer, especially when we have so much time with our kids.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're gonna work on these things.
Yes.
I'm gonna work on these things. We're all gonna work on these things. And you can use Heather. You see patients all the time.
I do, yeah. Reach out, I'm happy to help.
Patients,
Yep.
what do we call them?
Clients.
Clients, okay. And we'll have her information on our website. Thanks, Heather.